The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want bizonged leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
Welcome to another episode of Defenders Dialogue. This is Christopher Golden, and Brian Keene is not with us today. Brian, unfortunately, has lost power and cable access or internet access. And we have somebody very special filling in for Brian. That is the legendary Thomas Sniegoski. Say hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Now, regular listeners, the three people who regularly listen to this show, will be familiar with Tom's name because Brian and I have taken his name in vain many times while recording Defenders Dialogue. And Tom, explain why that is.
Now, all right, there seems to be a misunderstanding that I do not like the Defenders comics. Now, there's a little bit of truth and a little bit of falseness to this. I love the concept. I love the original Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Hulk, Namor. I love that stuff. It's as they went further into the run of the series is where I kind of lost interest. So that the characters didn't thrill me as much as...
Well, and you did stop reading at a certain point.
I did stop reading. Matter of fact, the issue that we're going to be looking at today, I had never read. So.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I also like the fact that you can remember that you hadn't read it, which is interesting. Well, first of all, Tom, traditionally I say Excelsior, true believers. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. And I also want to tell folks that Tom, if you're not that familiar with his work, is a comic book writer and novelist and writer of all kinds of other stuff. But his most recent book actually combines both of those things. And while this show, technically, we don't do a lot of self-promotion on here, but you should check out The Atomic Frenchie, drawn by Tom McWeeny, written by Tom Sniegoski. Listen, it's about Tom's dog trying to take over the world like Pinky and the Brain, and it combines comics and prose. And what else do we need to say?
Nothing much. I mean, that's pretty much covers it. Basically, what if the cute little dog that lives next door to you was Lex Luthor? That's pretty much the way I try to sell it to people.
Exactly.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. So, okay, so folks, we're only going to cover one issue. It's going to be a relatively short episode, except it'll be me and Tom arguing about the Defenders and this issue. And this issue is Defenders 111, which is written by J.M. DeMatteis, with breakdowns by Don Perlin, and finishes by Tom, somebody I'd never heard of before.
You know what? When I was looking at this, I was like, I have never heard of this person before. I kind of wonder if it was maybe somebody that like if Don Perlin had like a little like mini studio or something, and it might have been somebody that worked with him in the studio.
Maybe.
I have no idea.
But it's interesting because as we've gone through this run that has Perlin on, so thus far I think all of DeMatteis's run, or most of it anyway, has been either penciled or broken down by Perlin with a number of different people either on finishes or on inks, sometimes whole crews of people on inks or finishes. But this name, A. Mushinsky, I'm like, who the hell is that?
Yeah,
Um,
never heard it before.
so there you go. That's the mystery for this issue. The other thing I want to point out to you, Tom, and the longtime listeners of the show know this, is that Brian and I go back and forth because I actually love the character of Hellcat, aka Patsy Walker. Brian is partial to Devil Slayer. I like them both, but Brian likes Hellcat when we get to this version. He doesn't like her when she's more Patsy-ish, which is earlier on. Yeah, so this is called Fathers and Daughters, a dramatic turning point in the life of the Hellcat, brought to you by that creative team. And we start with Patsy, writing in a journal, and we are seeing what she's writing in the journal, and then we get basically a little bit of her backstory, how she became the Hellcat.
I didn't remember the stuff about Hank McCoy.
Yeah, that this stuff is so. Also, we should point out that, and I actually recently read. I was up at a comic shop in, I think it's Casablanca Comics in Portland, Maine, and I picked up the $1 True Believers reprint of Patsy's first appearance as Hellcat in the Avengers, whatever issue that was. And that one actually gives you flashbacks because Hank's in that issue to the Amazing Adventures issues, where Patsy and Hank first meet, etc., etc. And then in that issue of the Avengers, she dons the costume for the first time. But since then, we've had Satan appear in the six-fingered hand saga and claim that he's Patsy's actual father. And that's where she gets her powers. She thought she got the powers from the suit. So it's just a constant, reconfiguring of these stories about her. So basically, now she's found out that she's searching for the guy she always thought was her father, thanks to her surrogate mother and housekeeper, Dolly Donahue. Her mother is dead at this point. And Dolly has basically convinced her to seek out the truth, to find out whether or not the person who she thought of as her father was actually the devil. So she's searching for her, she's going back to where she's from to find out the supposed truth. Tom.
I wish this issue had more Buzzy Baxter.
Yeah, well, so they
her failed marriage to Buzzy Baxter.
Well, but the thing about that is that, like, they've shown now, like in the new version, he's like he was abusive to her.
Okay.
And so that's why that's what ended their marriage. She finally found the strength to leave him, which is actually really interesting. I guess, Tom, like, if you think about what they're doing in Riverdale and what they're doing with the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah.
In an interesting way, like what Archie Comics is doing right now is kind of what Marvel did with Patsy Walker in the early 80s.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, it's what's so funny is I can remember being at my local comic shop and he would have lots of like old back issues, and he had multiple issues of the Patsy Walker comic, which was like Archie.
Right.
So the fact when they dragged her into the Marvel universe and stuff, that I always found that like fascinating. Was kind of like how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to do it? And in a way, it took them a while to kind of like almost like somehow remove the stigma of the Archie-esque characteristics and make her kind of a character of her own. And I would imagine that something like this, where you're saying that she's the devil could be her father and stuff like that, goes a long way of kind of dragging the character forward and away from that kind of silly past.
Yeah, it's funny because she goes through this period. Like I said, Brian, when she's first introduced in the comic, Brian really doesn't like her at that point. It's only when we start to see a darker side of her that he likes her. And I actually like the dichotomy in the character, the fact that she's both of those things,
Yeah.
But now, what about? I know you recently have been trying to catch up on Jessica Jones season 2. Did you finish it?
No, I still have like maybe 4 or 5 episodes to go. But she's fascinating. She's a fascinating character on the show.
Yeah, she's great, and she only becomes more interesting in the rest of season 2. Although she doesn't suit up.
Okay.
I'm hoping that before Netflix finally draws the curtain on the rest of their Marvel TV series, that in Jessica Jones season 3, which I presume they're doing, I hope that we will see Hellcat.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I'd be very curious to see how they pulled it off in terms of the costume.
Yeah. Now
I don't
back
think
to
we'll see bright yellow. I don't think we'll see a bright yellow.
No, yeah, that's what we were saying too. I mean, maybe it'll be yellow on blue instead of blue on yellow, but now what do you think about now again, like, interestingly enough, although this issue is very wordy because of the narration of Patsy's journal and all of this stuff.
I can't stand her handwriting.
You mean the
it literally made my eyes cross as I was reading it.
Yeah, the lettering is hard to
it's
hard to read. But then again, you're old, so
that's true. Maybe if I put on my viewing specs, I would be able to see it better.
But all that that said, what I found interesting is that even though it's only breakdowns by Perlin and finishes by somebody I'd never heard of before, the art's actually not that bad.
The art is competent. The art tells the story, but I find it, if you take a look at this artwork, and again, I don't want to slam anybody's art style or anything like that. It's very old in terms of, like, even the way the panels are laid out, and like that first page which shows her writing in the journal, and then there's like she's like going to be getting off the bus.
Yeah.
You look at the truck and look at the way the bus is drawn. I mean, it's almost like something out of like 1940.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny you should mention that, because this comic did come out in the early '80s, and none of the vehicles. I wonder if A. Muschinsky was somebody who was retired, or.
I mean, I guess it's possible.
Now we're just reading into it, but
we should do some research. I mean, even right down to look at the guy she meets at the bus station with the yellow hat. Look at how he's drawn. That's like a 1940s character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
You know, his clothes, his hat.
I mean, again, although Perlin did the breakdowns, that would have just been a very loose breakdowns.
Probably,
what I mean?
Yeah. But that's what as I was reading it, I was fascinated because it really looks old. It has an old look. It has like a mid-40s, late or early 50s look to it.
Yeah, and as I'm reading this now, it was Andy Muschinsky. I'm looking it up now.
Oh, okay.
And you're finding that I'm looking for information about Andy Muschinsky live here while we're recording the show. There isn't a lot. He did some inking on various Star Wars comics for Dark Horse at some point.
Oh, wow! Okay.
Earlier on, he did he did ink on Defenders 121, which we haven't gotten to yet. He inked some Spider-Man 326, Amazing Spider-Man 326, which was drawn by Colleen Duran, actually. So I could ask Colleen, but that is interesting. But there's not a
it has it's interesting that how old it looks in terms of how it's even set up and designed, and even the way the characters look and stuff.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm curious about that. But anyway, so basically we go through this thing where Patsy's going to talk to this guy about about her father, someone that supposedly knew her parents, and it's this guy named Eddie, and her father's name was Josh, by the way, and he was a co-worker of Eddie's, and basically he just up and quit one day, and she hasn't seen him yet, and then she leaves, and I don't know. We're just left with that, and then the thing is, it's set up, as you say, in this really sort of old-fashioned way.
Right.
Then she walks the streets, and she's thinking. We get the journal narration. She doesn't know, is Eddie a demon who's actually working for Satan? Because she still doesn't know if her father was Satan or not.
Look at those suspenders. Of course he's a demon.
Come on, I've seen you in that outfit.
That is a fetching outfit, let me tell you.
Then she bumps into this guy on the street, Tom. And
yeah. And look at the way he's drawn.
Well, he's dressed like somebody out of the 1800s.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's Dapper Charlie. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that his, honestly, like, it's a giveaway just looking at him.
Oh, complete. And look at that. And what is his name? Iblis? Isn't Iblis another,
Iblis.
Like, in mythology, isn't that like one of the devil's names?
Yeah, Nicholas Eblis.
Iblis, Eblis.
Yeah.
He's a professor of theology.
Yeah, exactly.
Who'd have thunk it?
I do think that maybe in a simpler time.
Oh, without a doubt.
This is that it is not. It's a bit of a giveaway to modern audiences and probably to other audiences. Now, quickly, I should point out that that we have had in the past issue or two other interludes. Now, Tom, you won't be aware of this, but at the time that this is taking place, Nighthawk, Kyle Richmond, was killed and is dead. And Namor and Doctor Strange and the Hulk, and there's a one-page interlude here that shows us them on in this place that is Earth, but perhaps not the Earth we're familiar with. And Nighthawk in a different costume is talking to his former Defenders colleagues.
I don't remember this costume at all.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Wow.
And basically, Nighthawk basically says you have to accept I'm alive because we've got much bigger problems. And he points out the bigger problem is Hyperion, who is a member of the Squadron Supreme and also has returned in recent years to Marvel continuity.
And basically, a Marvel's version of Superman.
Yep, exactly, literally.
Yeah.
Then we have an interesting page because this is basically a Catwoman page, right? I mean, the classic thing of it's Patsy up getting dressed in her Hellcat costume in the middle of the night, sort of very sexy. She's going out to patrol and find out what more she can learn about Eddie Fielder, this guy who knew her father.
Yeah.
And she has a moment of dizziness and queasiness. There's something going on with her that she doesn't quite understand, and she sort of swings off into the night. And but she doesn't get far.
Wonder what she's swinging from.
Yeah, well, a tree, presumably, with her.
That's a pretty high tree.
Yeah, exactly. It does get her. It does get her pretty high. And somehow, Tom, she lands back where she began. She lands back at the boarding house where she's staying. And why don't you tell our audience what comes next?
Well, she gets back. She's all aflutter because she's back at the boarding house when she does her acrobatic flips from the rooftops. She's all confused, and then everything starts to become distorted. She starts to things get wavy and stuff. And of course, Mr. Iblis comes out of the room with three very unusual characters. One of them right out of Popeye.
I was just thinking the same thing. He's a sea captain.
That guy's got to be called Poop Deck.
He's got to be called Poop Deck. He's either right out of Popeye or he's a member of the crew of the ship that takes the people to go find King Kong on Skull Island.
Yes,
I can't think of the name of the ship all of a sudden. Off the top.
One of the like the Tintin guys.
Yeah, he takes Ann Darrow to Skull Island. But although you're right, he does also look like he's from Tintin. Yeah.
But, it fits with like Iblis's design. It's kind of like everybody has this weird kind of almost like odd. It doesn't quite fit the time period look.
Right. Exactly. And then on the next page,
I think the only one on that page that could fit the time period is the old lady in the sweater. I mean, she kind of like in the house coat and the sweater. She could be all right, but the other one the other lady in the Victorian dress and stuff.
Yeah, the old lady. Right, there's a lady in Victorian dress. The old lady in the sweater reminds me of Rosanna Dana from Saturday Night Live.
Kind of.
Anyway, we turn the page and we find out why they're sort of so unusual, which is that The other three of them are actually demons, and Iblis reveals himself to be some variation on Satan, looking quite a bit different from how he looked the last time we saw him. Patsy attacks them. There's a fight. We won't go through that. She defeats the other three demons, and then she's up against Satan. She beats the crap out of him, but all of this is he's trying to get her riled up, so she transforms back into the cat from hell, the demonic version of Patsy that we saw in the Six-Fingered Hand saga.
Oh, I was just about to ask, have we seen this interpretation of the character before?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We have. But in this case, she doesn't need anybody else's help to get control again. She basically wrests control of herself and her anger and all of that, and sort of pushes it down and refuses. She says, I know now, I can feel it as I've never felt it before. I'm no daughter of yours. So she realizes, as she loses her temper, but then she's able to get it back under control, that she is not indeed, that she is human, that she's not Satan's child. And the weird thing, Tom, is you won't know this, but what DeMatteis has been doing for a long time in this is he's been basically trying to he's been shown to be in some ways a positive influence on her and on Son of Satan, in the sense that he's forcing them to, like, look inside themselves or something. It's a very strange theological experiment that DeMatteis is conducting here. But
he did a lot of that kind of things in all the books that even followed the defense. It's like when he was at DC with Dr. Fate and stuff like that. He did a lot of like strange religious things with various religions and things like that. Really, yeah. So you can, reading this, I could see almost like the beginnings of like germs that he would use elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah,
and what's interesting here is that what he says specifically is he implies that the Hellcat version, the thing that he sort of planted inside her, was almost her temptation. He allowed her to manifest her darker self as a temptation to see if she would like grasp that power. And he basically says, if you had given in to that darker self, your soul would have been mine and your humanity would have been buried forever. So, but now she's earned the honor of an explanation. So he reverts back to the Satan we saw in the Six-Fingered Hand saga. And then we get something, Tom, it's interesting to me that you haven't read this, because we've discussed, so I'm not sure where else he's done it. We've discussed before, in my brain, what he's talking about here is the version of Marvel's Hell that has always been in my brain, and that we used in our Punisher miniseries that's going to be reprinted in February. This idea that there are these different segments of hell in Marvel. Well, do you want to talk about it, or you?
Well, it's always confused the hell out of me, because it always changes. Whoever's doing something with it changes it a little bit, and it never quite gels inside my brain.
But so DeMatteis sums it up here.
It's pretty much like different. Is there like different levels of hell, and each one is ruled by another, like almost like representation of the devil? Is that what?
Yeah, I mean, basically that's the idea. It's sort of like Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion.
Okay.
That in a way they're all the same creature, but all different manifestations of that creature, including Mephisto, Thog, Asmodeus, Satanish. And he says here, their forms are different, although their personalities and dominions are distinct and individual. All of them emanate from me. I am consciously within them, though even they do not know it.
So this guy with Patsy, they're saying that he is the ultimate version, and these other versions of the devil kind of come off of him, kind of.
Yeah, in a way, I guess it's sort of like how Zeus gave birth to the Greek gods from his skull.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That this is Satan, and all of these other manifestations are sort of, they are individual, but they're also part of him. I mean, I guess in some way we could say, not to be blasphemous, but it's sort of like the concept that Jesus is both God and the Son of God.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. But then he also goes further to talk about how together we're darkness made visible, manifestations of the evil that resides in the heart of all mankind. We are not independent entities who have sprung into being of our own volition. We are the creations of humanity itself, physical projections of mankind's collective unconscious. So he's basically saying that God didn't create us, that mankind's belief in evil and belief in hell and belief in... It gets very complicated.
Yeah.
Tim Addison is getting really sort of deeply into it. And basically he's saying that the story of Lucifer in this continuity is essentially not true, or if it is true, he is not the same Satan from the Bible, he's saying.
Yeah.
Although this is hell. And then he talks about how each person has a personal devil, and following behind like a second shadow, which reminds me of A Christmas Carol in some ways, which we talked about last episode, because there was definitely a Christmas Carol vibe to what happened with Devil Slayer. It becomes this sort of philosophical treatise, and then Patsy gets a ride through hell. Then basically we get Satan's version of the Six-Fingered Hand saga, which we don't need to sort of go into because we've already kind of dealt with that.
Right.
What do you think about this face in the puddle thing, Tom? We get back to the boarding house, and or the boarding house was there, but it's gone now, and there's just a puddle of water.
And the devil's face is reflected there. You know what, though? What's interesting, and this is just my take. Looking at that, you look at it and you're like, that's kind of silly. It looks kind of silly. But I think with another artist's interpretation might be able to pull that off. I think I think the simplicity of the artwork actually kind of detracts from what could be kind of a striking, kind of a striking image. It's done so simply, and again, it's done very, it's efficient. It's competent. It does it tells the story the way the story needs to be told. But I think with somebody with a little bit more like panache to their art style, like a Bernie Wrightson would take that panel and probably do something completely crazy with it, and you'd look at it and you say, "Wow, that's really cool."
Right.
But I think the simplicity of it kind of almost like detracts from what could be an interesting panel. Right.
It does get it feels cartoony.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. In any case, Satan basically says to her that now that he's now that they've passed this point, the game goes on. I resume my preordained role and you yours. If we meet again, it will be as it should be. I as Prince of Evil, Lord of Lies, and you as a worthless mortal sow. When this episode goes up tonight, most of this country will be watching election results, and presumably people who call women worthless mortal sows will be sad tonight. I hope.
I hope to.
Anyway, so Patsy goes back, and do you want to explain what transpires in the next scene?
Let me see if I can remember. When she gets back, she actually doesn't go back. She gets back and goes to look for the guy who met her at the bus station.
Yeah, who's now changed out of his suspenders.
He doesn't have his suspenders anymore. He has a lovely blue sweater vest. And he's talking to Stan Lee. No, it's not Stan Lee. It's the guy who ends up being Patsy's father, Joshua Walker.
Yeah, although it's actual... it looks an awful lot like that era's Stan Lee.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah.
If you had a little gray to the temple, that would be Stan Lee.
From the early 80s.
From the early late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And of course, so that's her father. She takes her mask off and says who she is. She reveals herself
to
Patsy.
Him. They have a tearful reunion.
A tearful reunion, yep. Yep. And they hug.
And by the way, he reveals in the conversation with his old friend before that Patsy overhears, that basically, this guy wondered if Patsy was really who she's saying she is, or if she's some private eye that Dorothy, Patsy's mother, might have sent to find her. The idea is that he was sort of told to stay away from her. Patsy's still writing in the journal, so we find out this is a framing sequence, and we're back to the beginning. And her dad's making her, and this I thought was such a deference to the original Patsy Walker. Dad's making her a grilled cheese sandwich. She says, "I hope there's some chocolate milk to go with that," which is so, such something from the earlier Patsy era.
Definitely. That fits in with that kind of almost like that whole Archie take on the character, Yep. And now the other thing I guess I should lay out is that we discover that not only that, but he has a wife and sons. Yeah. And it sounds like it might be the wife's kids, though, not his.
Yeah. Yep. They're meeting. They're eager to meet. Or they might be. They're eager to meet their new sister. Yep. She's happy about that. And then, folks, we have the issue ends with a quick scene back with Kyle Richmond. And he is in the Oval Office, of all places, in the White House. We find that he's having a conversation, that Kyle is the President of the United States, and he is having a conversation with a being known as the Overmind.
Who we saw in the Fantastic Four. That was the Fantastic Four villain.
And we will see lots of the Overmind as we go forward in Defenders from this point. And there we go, and that's where we wrap it up. That's the end of the issue. Tom, did you have fun on your first episode of Defenders Dialogue?
Oh, of course I did. Well, I got to read a comic that I've never read before, so
right.
Now, and again, it's not that I don't like the Defenders. I actually really like the concept of the Defenders. It's just that a lot of these characters don't speak to me the way the early appearances of the characters do.
Well, I encourage you to and I encourage listeners to go and read along with us as we do the show. And Tom, I encourage you to go back and pick up where you left off and read the rest of the Defenders, including the stuff going forward from here. There's some really fun, cool, interesting stuff with a bunch of oddball Marvel characters.
Yeah, I like there was even what was the run? There was the run that Keith Giffen did that had Moon Knight.
Yeah.
And the Zodiac.
Yeah.
I remember liking those. I remember thinking those were kind of fun.
Yep, those were late 40s, early 50s of the run.
Yep.
And also I know you're going to be back with us when we do the Gargoyle miniseries at some point.
Oh yeah, right. I have to get my hands on that so I can reread it.
Yeah, look that up and we'll do that. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Brian will be back with me next episode. Thank goodness, because Tom. Nobody needs more Tom than we've had today.
You don't need me to be crapping on your Defenders.
No, see, listen. I mean,
no, I was good. I mean, again, I enjoyed reading the comic. I thought it was very nostalgic.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to drum up the nostalgia.
Yep.
Anyway, so thanks again, everybody. Excelsior, true believers.
Do you love comic books and consider yourself a die-hard fan? Then you need to listen to Parlapod. We have news, reviews, and interviews with your favorite pros, all while bringing some serious laughs. New episodes drop every Wednesday in time for New Comic Book Day. Parlapod is available on the Project Entertainment Network, all major podcast outlets, and parlapod.com. Tune in and fuel your fandom with Parlapod.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows. Three guys with beards: Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybury, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast, Ig on.
Brian Keene at The Horror Show, Chuck Buda, and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban, sick of ink stains.
Bizung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.